It's the Boomsday Project Inn-vitational, and we are back and getting ready for round 3. I'm Matt Admirable, joined by Dr. Jink and Inky. We just came off of the my head just completely lost where we came from.
Just came off of
I
Taiwan
literally
versus
just watched it.
USA. USA.
I literally just watched it. And
I was just busy making this concoction. I don't know what you were doing.
I'm thrown off by the war gear in Priest. That's what threw me off.
Really? The war gear and Priest?
Yeah.
That's what threw you off?
Well, you know, it's unexpected.
I think it's so powerful, especially when you curve out with that unpowered steam bot that we were talking about earlier. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine staring at a 5-14 with taunt?
With taunt. It's just taunting you at that point. We played matches throughout the day. Players have to submit at least 8 new cards within their decks. They're bringing 4 decks. It's got to have 8 Boomsday cards in it, and they're playing off in a best-of-3 conquest match versus one of the other teams that are out there. So they're collaborating with each other and working together in this one. And as we said, we just came off of round 2, so let's take a look at the standings and see where teams are sitting right now in case you've missed anything throughout the day. You can catch the match score and the games, how many they've won in that series as well. Even though they are playing best of 3, we will be seeing the 3rd game regardless of the game score at that point.
Yeah, you know, it's great to see how, you know, powerful Korea and Taiwan they've been doing so far. Just crazy to see that, you know, I believe they brought more of the, I would say, wackier decks, and they've actually just been crushing the other teams. I mean, it's just crazy. I love that warrior deck that we saw earlier, and I really want to see it later on. I don't believe we're going to see it in this next set because it's going to be Europe versus Taiwan, but that warrior deck was very interesting to me. I think there's a lot of potential there.
On Warrior's just a strong deck. Just tank up and hit things. As long as you're playing against minions, that is. You
Yeah,
don't want
if
to
you're
play
playing
against
Mechathune, you're in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
I don't think you have too many answers for that card.
Not too many ways to kill minions from hand for the old control warrior that's out there right now. But, you know, you mentioned the more experimental decks. You know, in my time casting the Asia Pacific and Chinese region, they are the teams who are most willing, I felt, in competitive play to experiment with all kinds of crazy deck lists. And now we are actually in the experiment set. So I am looking forward to these coming playoffs that are happening soon. I'm looking forward to today. And just seeing what gets cooked up in general. You know, I personally have been playing with a lot of different crazy stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I feel like that some of the stuff I'm like, wow, that's really good. And other stuff I'm like, okay, that is awful. So I'm gonna scratch that one off the list and go on to the next one.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You know, I'm not the greatest of deck builders, but it's still fun when you get to that period of time where you know everyone's experimenting. So even if your experiments may not be as good as the other person, you still feel like you have a chance, right? Because, you know, everyone's testing, everyone's having fun with this set. So you don't really feel like, oh, that odd paladin again.
Gosh darn it.
Gosh darn it.
That is going to happen sometimes, though. But we do have an interview with an experimenter himself. It's Dane from the European team. Dane, can you hear me?
Yep.
How's it going, my friend? You've been battling with some new stuff, but match 1 did not go so well for you guys. Any lessons learned? Any things you would like to change from those deck lists, perhaps?
Yeah, I think the Malagos Druid is tricky to make it work with the 8 brand new cards. I think that might be a little bit of a weakness at the minute, but I wouldn't have minded bringing Hunter, actually, like Frodo mentioned before. That may have been like a little undiscovered treasure from the expansion.
Undiscovered treasure?
Oh, yeah.
Care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I want to hear about this undiscovered treasure.
Boommaster Flark, the man. I've been playing it in Wild. Well, I'm coming from a Wild perspective here, because you got Boommaster Flark and Feign Death and Baron Rivendare, so you can deal massive amounts of damage. But I thought I could have made it work in Standard maybe, but it might have been a bit of a long shot.
So you're just looking to do the giant burst damage all at once with Hunter.
Oh yeah, that's the way it should be.
None of this chip away nonsense that it's been for years. Well, your next opponents, the Chinese Taipei team, they just put on quite a good show. Are you looking forward to this next one? Are you fearing them perhaps a little bit?
Yeah, I caught a little bit of the Cthulhu Warlock. That put the fear of God into me, honestly. With all that board removal, and you've got that end game big finisher. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool deck that they brought, and I think we banned that.
Well, you had mentioned Wild real quick, so I wanted to ask you, how big of an influence do you feel this new set's going to have on the Wild format?
With Wild format, it takes time. Like for the first initial 3 days, there are very little bits of little pockets of experimentation. But give it about maybe about 2 weeks, you'll get maybe a good strong 10 to 20 cards being played in Wild. I think Druid obviously is going to be the main impact in Wild, especially with the melon. But it does take a little bit more time to tick over there.
All right. Well, thanks a bunch, Dane. I really look forward to your next match, and good luck in this one.
Cheers. See you later.
Dane.
WoW is something I don't experiment with that much, and it's great to hear just that opinion from like one of the WoW experts about what's going to be good and what's going to be popular, because it's just there's so much room for experimentation in WoW that it's crazy to think about all the different decks that can be built.
Well, Dane was the winner of the History of Hearthstone event that took place recently, and that was an event that did like an accelerated release of stepping stones from the first set of Hearthstone to the current standing of Hearthstone. So it was effectively played in Wild. And they didn't actually overcome that in a pretty stacked field where he was considered widely the underdog in that field due to the pedigrees of the players that were there, and he was able to overcome that. So, being able to hear his thoughts in particular, I always look forward to it because I know he loves to delve into that format very deeply.
Yeah, I believe you've actually been delving into that format recently, haven't you? I believe you were a rank 1 Wild legend earlier, weren't you?
I've always played Wild. I just like old cards. I'm just a weirdo.
I
love it.
I wouldn't say weirdo. I'd say it's reminiscent of the past.
I look at that pilot shredder. I'm like, whew. That's the one I want.
I remember you.
Take a look at the team lineups a little bit more closely here and see the actual decks and what they have banned. Again, they're playing best of 3 conquest and they get 1 ban from the opposing lineup. And as players are eliminated, they need to step away from the communications as they're able to start out with all 3 of them there. But you see Warlock banned away from Chinese Taipei and the Rogue banned away from Europe here.
Yeah, you see respect immediately given. Dane was talking about earlier, that Warlock deck. If you're running a slower lineup and you don't really have that finish potential that a lot of decks do have, and you go up against a deck like that, it's almost like you're playing out the game for the inevitability. Eventually, your opponent's going to assemble those combo pieces, and eventually they're just going to finish the game there. And if you can't finish them, you might as well ban that deck. There's no reason to even play against it because you know it's going to get a win somewhere.
You got to put them on a clock. You got to let them know. Start hitting them.
Not even Odd Paladin can put them on a clock. And that deck puts a lot of decks on the clock.
Defile is a card. Blows up.
You're not wrong.
A lot of things at one time. That's tended to be a weakness of Odd Paladin, is being able to, blow up all of their things at once and then put a big taunt in the way. Like, Void Lord, for instance.
That's a pretty big taunt.
It's a pretty big one. It's in 3 small ones to boot. It's a pretty tough card for them to handle. But, that's part of, I think, what you're seeing a lot from the experimentation of Boomsday Project as well, is not only how new archetypes can get born from that, but what support do the other archetypes get as well. As we get into game number 1, Tom's going to lead off with Priest here, and they'll be facing off against the token shaman of Europe. A lot of decks that, I want to say quotey fingers, the air quotey fingers, existed before, now might actually exist because they have the support cards necessary for them.
There's a lot of powerful tools like we see there, the Voltic Burst. I mean, that card, as simple as it is, it's powerful in what it can do. It enables other cards in the deck, like Thunderhead, to be more powerful, and it also just gives you a little bit of removal. It's kind of like a Maelstrom Portal, right?
Okay.
And Maelstrom Portal was widely considered one of the most powerful Shaman cards when it was in the rotation. So this kind of does a very similar effect, and it helps you just gain those tools against decks like, say, Odd Paladin that you wouldn't have in the past.
Just need little stuff to do things.
I mean, just playing 2/1/1s is also really good, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like...
Maelstrom Portal was absurd.
It really
right.
was.
Like, Maelstrom Portal, that minion that's in Mage, the 3 mana 2/2 that dealt 1 damage to your opposing board?
Yes.
The card was pretty good. But the thing about it was 3 mana was just, it felt like a little too much to invest, and there was no spell damage potential. It's hard enough for Mage to get spell damage. You have to actually dedicate a card to it. Shaman naturally gets that sometimes. So sometimes you just get a spell portal or spell damage thing, and then you portal, and it dealt 2 damage to the whole opposing board. That card was actually
pretty absurd.
The Voltic Burst, I feel like, is like a fair variety of Maelstrom Portal. You get to kill one health thing, and you get 1/1/1. And that's it.
That's it. But there we see Coin Primal Fin Totem. This is one of the premier plays, I'd say, from Shaman right now, especially when you have tools like Flame Tongue Totem just to kind of back it up. Makes sense just to, go ahead and get that out on the board.
I'm really surprised at how strong Mech Priest actually looks.
Yeah, when you look at it on paper, you're like, this is pretty powerful.
When I look at it on paper, I'm like, this is weird. I'm like, what are you doing?
I guess it's fair. When you look at it on paper, you say this is weird, but then you see it in practice and you go, huh.
But yeah, I'm watching it now and I'm like, you gotta kill all these mech things. That's tough to do, and they have a hero power that heals their things.
I mean, we might actually see here the unpowered Steam bot
I mean, look at this curve.
into the war gear.
This is not a joke. This is real, and I'm scared.
I mean, if you're Tice, you're not that scared, right? You still have this flame tongue totem putting in a lot of work.
Now, that being said, you know, all these little guys in a row for Tom are still going to put in a lot of work here too, though. You know, this 1-5 is going to effectively threaten to clear off board. And then Tice is left with, you know, some overload stuff. Now, his overload stuff is pretty darn good.
Yes. Especially with the synergy between Knife Juggler and Volcanic Burst. You know, it's not a combination I'd really thought of, because typically when you play Knife Juggler, you're playing it at, say, an even Shaman, and you wouldn't typically have that space to play the Volcanic Burst. But now looking at it here, just getting 2 1-1s and then 2 Juggles, and they have Rush, it's pretty strong.
Yeah, Voltaic Burst. Voltaic.
What am I saying?
You're saying volcanic.
Volcanic Burst?
That's what it feels like. It would be volcanic too, but this is not a nature set. This is a.
Are you sure it's not?
This is a science set, all right?
So I'm looking behind me and I'm looking at all the nature.
None of this nature crap.
Are you sure?
Oh, I'm certain. That's the second Knife Juggler. And one of the cool things I like about all the little small utility stuff that Shaman got is I can find ways to use like these tiny little 1/1 rush spells and like the 1 damage spell here to like suit up some, you know, utility and control style decks, but also like you couple them with Thunderhead. And this is what I mean by like support archetypes that existed before might now actually exist. Like Thunderhead plus an overload spell gives you 2 1/1 rush minions immediately, and that can provide a substantial amount of board presence.
Yeah, unfortunately for Tice here though, the combo we exactly were talking about, but ended up missing on one of the juggles, so now an extra minion has to go in, which is a bit of a detriment, but I mean, Tice is still in a pretty good spot here. Just gonna be the next turn's gonna be a little awkward, just committing just a Knife Juggler unless he picks something up off the top.
Yeah. You know, the other thing too I want to talk about is the Thunderhead, specifically in the way that it spawns. You know, if it was like Violet Teacher, it would spawn all of its minions to the right. They would have Rush, and Flame Tongue Totem would look ridiculous in that spot. Thunderhead actually spawns 1 to the left and 1 to the right of the Thunderhead. And I did not know that until I had gotten into a game with a Flame Tongue out. And I was like, I'll just clear that minion. My Rush guys are 1 on the left, 1 on the right. Okay, that's a good thing to learn. But that's the kind of experiment that you have to run. And then it doesn't work out as planned sometimes.
And the curious thing is since we're so new into this expansion, is that something that Tice knows? Does Tice know that it spawns 1 on left and 1 on right? Because it's not something you really think of. You kind of instinctually think, oh, it's probably going to be 2 to the right.
Spawn things happen to the right.
Exactly.
That's like a natural thing to think.
And here's that war gear onto that unpowered Steam bot that we were talking about earlier. We're just hyping up earlier. Doesn't look as good here, but it's still pretty powerful. That's what I was saying with the magnetic mechanic. It's a very powerful mechanic because you get so much versatility in how you play those cards.
Well, now I'm looking at the Wild Pyromancer, the Shadow Visions as well.
Yeah, with the Shadow Visions picked up, that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, that's a really big minion, though. Yeah. You get to kill a Flame Tongue. I like killing Flame Tongues.
Flame Tongue's just such a problematic card sometimes. But I heard you giggling right there, just right on par with the giggling inventors.
Well, I'm seeing a bit of a strong matchup for Tom here, though. You know, Giggling Inventor is a card that provides a lot of stuff, but Wild Pyromancer Shadow Vision is a card that kills a lot of stuff.
Yeah, most board-centric decks, when they have to go up against something like...
Look at
There's a lot of juggles.
Is this?
It was enough. But yeah, Wild Pyromancer against board-centric decks, just... There's not really much that, you know, Tice can really do. He has to play his cards and hope it's not there. But a lot of times it's there.
His jugglers.
Oh, and Circle of Healing on the Steam bot.
Yeah, this is a pretty good spot for Tom, I'd say.
A little absurd. Definitely think the Pyromancer is going to come out this turn. Just has to figure out, you know, the sequencing, because if you go for the circle first, of course, you heal up that Primal Fin Totem. That's something you don't really want to do. So it's going to be interesting to see the ordering. I wouldn't be surprised to see Wild Pyromancer Visions try and find a shield that we can try and clear up as much as possible.
You could do the Wild Pyromancer, you could Visions, and then if you find a cheap spell, you can also just circle and then use the spell afterwards as well. You'll heal up the Knife Jugglers, but the third spell will take them out.
Exactly.
And you'd clear out the Divine Shield and the Annoyatrons to be able to kill those as well.
You can also find Divine Spirit and just make this unpowered
Well,
Steamboat as big as possible.
The Devil. That's a circle. Again, it heals those back up. Then power gets damage.
Full
And
clear
Divine
on the
Spirit.
board.
Yep.
And that's a 5-9.
Yeah, that's got taunt. But, you know, Tice is not quite out of gas yet. A second Giggling Inventor. It's more Anoyas.
Yeah, Giggling Inventor, very annoying. See what I did there?
It was a tough one.
I've been thinking about that one the whole weekend. I've been thinking about how am I gonna fit this pun
I'm
in
not
here?
going to tie in Annoyatron with something that is annoying. I've got it.
I've got it. Eureka! Another shaman card.
See, that was a good one. Bravo. Tom is, you know, we're starting on the just have mech stuff. So this is like, I'd say like this is the scary part of the game for Tom, where he's like, please don't hex me, please don't hex me, please don't hex me, please don't hex me.
Consider.
It's kind of scary for both players because I believe both of these decks don't really have that kind of card generation that most decks currently we see play.
Doesn't have that oomph.
Yeah, no. I mean, the biggest thing for Tom is if he picks up, say, a Northshire Cleric and then finds the other Circle of Healing, then he gets it rolling. But other than that, you don't really have that kind of card draw that most decks have. And the most mid-range Shaman builds, they don't really have card draw either. So both of these players are just kind of at a stalemate here where they're just playing off the top of their deck. And I would say typically, I think the mid-range Shaman actually has more impactful draws than, say, this Mech Interfire Priest.
I think I'm in agreement with you there. You know, one of the things I look at for Shaman is like, or the card draw, again, I'm doing the air quotey fingers thing here, is like stuff that impacts the board, like Fire Elemental, maybe Arcane Dynamo, maybe Lich King, something like that. It's not really like this draw cards from your deck style of mechanic.
Yes.
It's just value cards. So, you know, that's something to think about. Once it gasses out, how do you reload? How do you reload the hand? I was thinking there's a 2-mana draw card, and if you played an elemental in the previous turn, you put an additional copy of it as well.
Like Mimic Pod.
Yeah. I was thinking that could be like a really cool card as well. You know, a lot of times Shaman stuff, like in pairs specifically, it tends to work a lot better.
I can definitely see that. I mean, the one thing is here, you know, Thunderhead, although it has that powerful ability, the Overload card currently in the hand is not quite the one you want to play. That one deals 1 damage to everything, so
Yeah.
I don't think that's something you really want to play here.
That's a losing to Odd Paladin sort of card. When you're losing to Odd Paladin, it's great.
See, not even
Oh boy.
taking any trades, just kind of saying, you know what, just gonna
No
let this board
spell.
stick. No spell again.
And this is where Annoyatron is really pulling some weight here for Europe. You need to buy time. You need to find that card that makes this all come together.
Yeah,
Taking second.
Giggling
Flame Tongue,
Inventor. Just powerful, obnoxious card.
Bloodlust, something to pay off for having all these minions on board.
It's not really much Tom can do. I mean, Tom's just going to go ahead and play out the minions and say, you know what? It's a minion battle at this point.
Yep, play stuff and hit stuff.
I mean, you might as well. There's not really much else you can do. I mean, this Steambot, though, is very big. Oh, but Flame Tongue. That'll help cut through it.
But the Mecharoo is in a really weird spot for this, though.
You're not wrong. Mecharoo is probably in the most awkward spot for this Flame Tongue.
Spawns a 1/1 when it dies, a 1/1 mech. And if that was on the other side of that Annoyatron, just to the right, that's 2 extra damage you would get out of this.
And that's something important. I mean, we've seen most Shaman lists fall in favor for the Shutterwalk Shaman. And Shutterwalk Shaman in the past has not played Flame Elemental. So, you know, maybe Tyson needs to get a little bit briefing up on that Flame Tongue Totem synergy.
Yeah, well, it's not like Paramount at the moment, I would say. You know,
no,
he's
definitely not.
Still clearing off a minion in about the same fashion.
It's definitely something you want to be conscious of for future turns, though.
Yeah.
But then again, I might have played that. I might have placed that Mecharoo right there as well.
There's little time.
Big yikes.
Oh, even gonna commit this?
Oh, look at this. This actually allows him to clear off stuff now.
Oh!
The spawns! How did I just forget about those? We just talked about them.
We did. It actually allows him to clear off majority of the board while also getting a value trade. Oh, I believe he didn't get the last attack in on the Pyromancer in time.
He might not have wanted it to. There's a chance, but his reaction is telling me he did want that attack.
I think he wanted it third, too, because imagine if, say, a Power Word Shield were to get picked up. That could have just been devastating and game-ending right there in and of itself. Fortunately for Tice, it's just a Divine Spirit, and right now Divine Spirit's not doing anything. The most it's doing is, you know, clearing up a little bit of the board, and you still got to take those trades.
This is not looking good.
No, it's really not.
Something's staying behind. Something good is staying behind for Europe this turn.
I wonder what Tom's thinking. Is he just trying to figure out what the, you know, what draws he needs in the future couple of turns just to try and stabilize?
I mean, this might be like thinking what deck is going to come next. He's losing.
It is. Maybe he's thinking, does he
could
even
win.
need to commit the Divine Spirit here? Maybe he needs to save it for, say, a draw on an unpowered Steambot. That way he can have a 0-18 that can soak a little bit of damage and then hopefully draw a War Gear. That's a lot to ask for.
He kept a lot around this turn. So that's the good news. That's what he was thinking about. But
Storm's a good pickup.
Yeah, that's going to summon some things. Attack
Precisely
first.
2 1-1s.
Miss damage. That positioning.
I can miss 2 damage.
Yep.
No, the topsy-turvy. Where's the test subject, Admirable? Oh, was that a Cult Master?
Oh, indeed it is.
It's actually cool to see cards like Cult Master kind of make a resurgence as well. Not cards you typically see in the meta right now, but when you have all of these Spark synergies where they just have Rush and they're small minions, and you know that you're going to trade with them.
Wait, did he not play the Cult Master?
No. I think playing the Cult Master kind of makes you susceptible to some kind of AoE effect.
Well, it also can kill your opponent on the next turn, though.
That is true.
Yeah, I like killing my opponent.
I didn't even think about that. You do kind of set up lethal if you play this Cult Master.
Well, no punish, really, but Tom's going to get another draw at this.
I mean, what does Tom need at this point? I'm trying to think at the top of my head, and there's not much really that I can think of.
It's like a miracle. This is looking rough. The old 7 minions versus 0 minions board typically favors the player with 7 minions.
Unless there's a Dustbreaker.
That was the card.
What can come off of it? Oh,
Not that.
Not that.
Is someone injured?
Tom was close. Tom's just laughing over there.
He's having a good time. Doesn't pick up the card necessary. Europe on the board first. 1-0. That priest deck, that was a pretty strong opener there, but it just kind of sputtered out. It was just too much stuff from Europe. You know, even utilizing like what I would call in that situation poor overload cards. You know, they made the most of the 1 damage to everything by being able to just completely clear out stuff, and then Tom just had to just replay minions and hope.
It was a nice play with the Thunderhead there, just making sure to have the positioning proper. We were talking about how, you know, the Mecharo positioning was kind of a little awkward, but if he was committing that spell anyways, he made sure to clear the entire board and just had a full 7-minion board of his own.
Right.
And that was just a great play from Tice there.
Yeah. Did miss the damage on the Flame Tongue, though, so I'm going to hammer him on that.
Don't worry. Let him know. Let him know. That 2 damage, that could have mattered. You never know.
That's one of the cool things that I have found with Boomsday Project as well, is that there's a lot of small mechanical things like that that really matter at the end game part of it. You know, I was talking to Dan in the first match. It's like sometimes the patience or lack thereof is a big deal. Being able to commit at the right time or being able to hold back resources for the right moment, I think is a pretty paramount thing in this new expansion, where before a lot of times you had your set game plan, you knew what you wanted to do, and it was a matter of having the deck built perfectly to execute that spot. I feel like now I'm getting into a lot of situations where I'm like, well, I don't quite know right now. This is a lot of new weird stuff that I'm encountering, and I don't quite know what to do yet.
And that versatility in Hearthstone is just so skill intensive. You know, when you have so many different branching options, you have so many of those options where you're not sure quite what the most proper play is here. Like, was committing that spell the proper play? I mean, it seemed very strong, but maybe he needed it later on. Maybe he should have used it earlier. It's just questions like that, especially with new sets that you have to ask yourself, that it just becomes so skill intensive.
Yeah, it's when you're down to like the felt on resources, like very little stuff,
Yes.
or you have so much stuff to do. Those are the spots where I always find myself getting confused. Where I'm like, should I hold this? And then with a ton of hands, I'm just like, I just don't know what to do. There's too many cards here.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance. You know, when you have too many cards, you're like, I don't know what to do. And then when you have no cards, you're like, well, do I even use these cards?
When I got like 4 cards, that's my sweet spot. So like
Is that the sweet spot?
Turn 1, I know exactly what to do. As soon as I get to like turn 3, I'm like,
So you're like an odd rogue kind of guy. Odd rogue consistently has like 4 cards.
It's always got a dagger though, which is basically just a card.
That's the 4th card.
Yeah, just a woodcutter's axe.
It's still powerful though. It's crazy to think when you start off with a woodcutter's axe how powerful it can be.
Yeah, every single time without having
And
to
every
use a
single
card.
game.
Yeah, you just kind of build your deck weird.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I like starting with 2 1-1s as well. I'll build my deck weird.
Yeah, it works out a lot this time. So we'll see what players are going to use for game number 2 against a best-of-3 conquest format. So once you win with the deck, it's out of contention. You lose the deck, you can play it again. And we will be playing out all 3 games regardless of whether or not the game score goes 2-0 or not. We want to give everyone a chance to play, and we want to see what cool decks they brought.
Yeah, I mean, you just have so many new different decks. I was excited to see the mid-range Shaman because I was a huge fan of mid-range Shaman. I know a lot of people are not going to like me for this, but when mid-range Shaman came out with the Thunderbuff Valiance, that was one of my favorite decks of all time.
You would like that deck.
I love that deck. That deck, Pirate Warrior.
I can't blame you for that because I like Druid a lot. I think it's cool.
The old combo Druid or the new Malagos
Any of
Druid?
them.
Any Druid?
Give me extra mana.
Well, Mechathune Druid.
I want to feel like I'm cheating. And when I have more mana than my opponent, that's what it feels like. And I'm like, yes.
So you just put all the ramp in there. It's the 2 biology projects. It's the 2 wild growths, the 2 nourishes.
Biology's kind of fair. You know, we both get it.
I do agree with that. I like biology. I like the way it is because although you get this powerful swing and you get to cards like Ultimate Infestation much quicker, you're also giving your opponent more powerful plays. You give them a 3-drop on turn 1. You give them things like, you know, just Hero Power 1-drop, especially if it's like something like Odd Rogue that we were mentioning earlier. Just getting that dagger online as quickly as possible is powerful. So I definitely like the design of that card.
When I build my Druid deck, I just want to know that my cards cost more mana, and that if we both get to that point at the same time, that typically I'm the one who's in a better spot.
But what happens if your whole hand is like 50 mana? You're just looking at 2 Sleepy Dragons and 2 Primordial Drakes and 2 Dragon Hatchers and 2 Master O cards.
Sounds like I need 50 mana then. It's great. Let's go. Give me those projects. I need them. I need that extra mana. Players are getting set up. We're not just talking to hear us talk. We'll be ready to get underway as soon as they are. So thank you for taking a moment to bear with us here. I know that bearing with me and Dr. J can be teeth.
Oh, trust me, we have some great conversations. Especially about Hearthstone. You know, just a game we all love to play. Love to talk about. Love talking about Hearthstone.
So it sounds like game number 2 is getting underway. So let's get ready to hop into it. I heard a Gul'dan.
And you'd be right.
Yep.
But you know what else we heard?
Garrosh. I love Warrior right now too. I don't know what it is about mechs, but just something with me and Warriors and mechs, I'm like, this feels right. Now this hand does not look right now.
No, it really doesn't. But something about just having that tank up hero power. It doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't matter how awkward your hand is. Your opponent plays a Voidwalker. You look at it and you go, all right, heal 4. They look at you and go, deal 1.
Yeah.
Pass. And I mean, just having that heal 4 every turn is just so powerful. Sometimes you don't even need other options. Your hand can be really awkward. I believe we saw that earlier on in one of the other sets where, you know, the hand was a little bit awkward at the start, but just healing up every turn.
It's not even just heal 4, it's just shield 4.
Shield 4?
Yeah.
I like the way you put that.
Look, if I'm at 30, I still get it anyway. And I love that.
I like shield 4 because I get it, because it looks like a shield when you hit the hero power button.
Dane's going to be on the Warlock here, and we saw this a little bit earlier. It's a demon-centric Zoo Warlock build.
We've seen a lot of the Zoo Warlocks.
He's had Void Analyst in here, 2 mana, 2/2. It says Death Rattle, all demons in your hand, gain +1/+1. And he's got that Buster on the far left. It's a 3 mana, 1/5 demon, but it gets +1 attack for each damage you've taken this turn. So say you play Flame Imp alongside it, it's going to get +3 attack. If you Flame Imp and Life Tap, it's going to get +5 attack. for that 3 mana that's on there. And Solarium, the legendary Warlock spell from Boomsday Project. You draw 3 cards for a single mana, but at the end of turn, you got to discard those cards that you didn't use.
It's very powerful in the late game. In the early game stages, it's not what you want to be playing because, of course, you know, you only got 1 mana. You're just discarding 3 cards. There's no reason to play it. But when you get to the later stages, when you're just trying to life tap and keep finding those resources, it's a card that sometimes can just put you back into the game. It's kind of like Divine Favor, where you've played all your resources and now you're running out, and you say, you know what, I just need more resources. So you go ahead and play the Solarium and then draw a bunch of cards and you get there.
Yeah, and oftentimes the nature of the aggressive Warlock decks is that they're relying on, you know, burn spells or effective burn spells, like Doomguard, to be able to finish the opponent. So, you know, while it's unplayable a lot of times in the first few turns of the game, that's the cost that comes with being able to see 3 extra cards from your deck.
And there's that Void Analyst we were mentioning earlier, the 2-mana 2/2 Death Rattle. Give +1/+1 to each demon in your hand. It's actually very powerful. I was playtesting with that a little bit when the set first came out. I originally thought it was a battle cry, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put 2 of these in everything.
Like, whoa!
Then I realized it was a Death Rattle the first time I played it, and I went, you know what, this is still good.
You know, that's the experience I had with Void Caller, if you remember that minion. It was a 4-mana 3/4 Death Rattle. It said,
Oh, yes.
summon a demon from your hand. And when I first read it, I was like, this card's insane! Because I thought it said battle. And then when someone's like, that's Death Rattle, I was like, oh, that's still pretty good.
Still pretty good. That was my reaction with Void Analyst. But I did get a surprise the first time I played it and realized it didn't +1/+1 my hand.
Roger's hand's starting to shape up as well here. He's drawing a couple of mechs. You know, Ziliax is a big one to look at. It's a 5-mana 3/2 magnetic, Divine Shield, Rush, Taunt, Lifesteal. That's a lot of keywords. So every damage it deals, it's going to restore that much health. And the magnetic, I think, is really one of the big parts of that, where you can slap that onto one of your big mechs that's already on board and gain back a bunch of life. And then also, you know, give a minion taunts. That way you can disrupt the attack from your opponent, gain back even more health from a card like that. And you see the Piloted Reaper in hand, 4-mana 4/3. It's Death Rattle, summoning 2 cost or less minions from your hand. You know, this is a pretty straightforward-looking mech-odd control warrior. It's going to want to blow up every minion from Dane for pretty much the entire game.
It's cool to see additions like Nightmare Amalgam. Not a card you typically see too often. You only see it really in Murloc decks. But since it has every tag, it works so well with this new magnetized mechanic where you can just go ahead and play it out and then maybe play a Ziliax on it just to kind of get that value. But there we see one thing that Warrior sometimes has trouble with is just 2 well-statted mid-range minions. You can't really brawl it. You don't really want to use your removal on it, but sometimes they just keep racking up that damage over and over. And we see Dane set up a board state where it is exactly that, just 2 mid-range minions that are going to keep stacking up the damage. And Ziliax here is going to come in for a really clutch trade.
Yeah, just Omega Assembly looking for some big stuff to play. You know, one of the biggest warrior mechs that got introduced is a 5-mana 3/4 Dynomatic, and it deals 5 damage randomly distributed amongst non-mech units. And that card is so strong because of its potential to just clear out a bunch of small health stuff or kill 1 5-health minion. And it leaves something behind to keep battling for board. Like, that to me is like the shining reason to play warrior right now.
I mean, we saw how powerful that card was earlier, where it full cleared the board and then just set up lethal on the following turn.
Oh yeah.
Not many cards can do that.
Well, Dane's having a bit of a rough turn here.
I wonder.
Yeah, it doesn't have the strongest of options. I mean, can just go ahead and play out one of the 5 drops, maybe play Serenite Chain Gang. I think you definitely want to fit the Soulfire in because the Soulfire allows you to push this damage through that you really need to because you are the aggressive deck. You are the aggressor. You cannot give Roger any kind of time. So by taking trades, you're giving him more time.
Yeah, you are getting, you know, board development too, though. It is important versus Roger to set up board and try to punish him for that. It's not as simple as just dealing damage. So we'll see how this ends up working out, but when the Odd Warrior hits that 7 mana and they still got 30 life,
and they have the room to just play a Gorehow,
that's
how you know you're in trouble.
Yeah, that is big yikes territory.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, just see Doomguard. Just get him. Ooh, gonna opt for the Solarium.
So this does dictate the plays to some degree. So notice that Soul Infusion not so good in this particular spot unless he wants to play the Fungalmancer here, which I could totally see. You know, Voidwalker, Demon Fire, not the strongest, but neither is the Fungalmancer play. But the Fungalmancer allows him to use Soul Infusion, which says give the leftmost minion in your hand +2/+2, which suddenly is the Sarnic Chain Gang. It's going to summon 2 4/5s.
It's just so awkward, though, because you really want this Fungalmancer to hit on 2 minions. I almost wouldn't be surprised to maybe see the Voidwalker Fungalmancer and just push the damage there. I think that's also a really strong play, but it depends on how much Dane wants to utilize all of these cards. If he just wants to go ahead and play out as many as possible, that way they don't get discarded, that's something to consider. But, you know, I might have gone for maybe a stronger play and just say, you know what, let's sacrifice both of these cards.
Wants to land that Fungalmancer for full value. Dr. Boom.
Ooh,
Mad Genius gets drawn. New hero card. 7 mana. You get 7 armor. All your mechs have rush for the remainder of the game. And it features a transforming hero power.
There's so many different options for the hero power. Like there's one that gains armor.
Yeah, at the end of every turn, it'll swap. So Roger's going to see a new hero power here, and Dane gets to see it as well. And that one is a deal 3 damage hero power. You just pick something, pop it for 3. You just laser it.
That's insane.
There's 7 armor, there's Discover a Mech, there's Summon 3 1/1 mechs, and there's deal 1 damage to the opposing road.
All pretty powerful in their own respect. I mean, a lot of times you want to make sure you get specific, you want to try and get specific ones in certain scenarios, but a lot of times, you know, all of those effects are just very powerful in their just own right.
Well, it's going to be valuable to pick up something like a board clear here. Rogers, you know, doesn't have that available right now, so it's going to be fighting for board the good old-fashioned way.
But the mechs do have rush. Can go ahead and fight for board that way.
Security Rover, it's a 6 mana 2/5. Every time it takes damage, you summon a 2/3 mech with taunt.
And because of Dr. Boom Mad Genius, that mech with taunt's also going to have the rush ability. So I wouldn't be surprised to see as much cleanup as possible. Go ahead, take 2 value trades, put the Gorehound into the Serenite Chain Gang, and even use that last mech just to get another value trade.
Cleaning up board. That's Discover a Mech hero power that he just fetched there, so we got more mechs coming, but life total's starting to fall dangerous. I could totally see Dane just ripping it here. Like going for the Soulfire.
Ooh, going for both? Going for the Hail Mary play, the Soulfire and a Doomguard?
You could get your opponent down to about 1 life if this succeeds.
Oh, but if you discard this Doomguard,
Big yikes.
that is a huge yikes. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to maybe just see Demon Fire come onto the taunt and then play the Doomguard. That's another strong possibility because you get in a little bit less damage, but you still put a lot of pressure on your opponent.
Building a board has seemed to be a theme. Oh, look at this. Wait a minute. I like this a lot. This keeps the 2/2 around.
Keeps the 2/2 around. You also fit in a life tap.
Soulfire gets drawn.
Doesn't have enough mana quite yet to play it, but unless some
Roger's
armor gain gets picked up, that's game.
Exactly. Roger's at 3 right now. So there is a mech that can armor you, and it is a warrior mech. It's an Eternium Rover, 1 mana, 1/3. It says every time it takes damage, you gain 2 armor.
And it would have rush, which would allow you to take that damage immediately.
But he's got to kill all the stuff on board.
This would be a good time.
I mean, but the cool thing about that is if he actually discovers it, he can use the piloted Reaper and then take a trade with the rush and then pull it out of the hand because it costs 2 or less. And then he can use it to take a hit onto the 2/2, and then he can even play the Rabid Worgen. I mean, he has to find it at this point. That's a lot of things to go right.
That's a lot of things to go right.
But it's possible. It is in the realm of possibilities, Admirable. The question is, even if he has the option, maybe he thinks he's fine.
Well, that's not it. And so he could battle all he wants, but that Soulfire in Dane's hand is going to end this game.
Yeah, Roger's just going to go ahead and play out the cards, but Like you said, that Soulfire in the hand's going to end this game. Europe's going to take a 2-0 lead over Taiwan.
That's right. So that's gonna secure them the series, but we're gonna see a game 3 regardless of that. We want to see every single player. We want to see all the cool decks they've brought. So Europe puts a match on the board for themselves. So they're now 1-1 match score, but they've got to play that additional game so that we can see their cool decks. They are gladiators inside of our arena. Well, I'm sorry, they're henchmen inside of our laboratory.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
The gladiators didn't make sense because we're kind of going for a Boomsday approach.
Yeah.
But the henchmen in the laboratory, that's perfect. We're forcing them to do these wacky and crazy experiments, and we're saying, you know what? Experiments compete.
He's like, does anything go wrong here? You're like,
Nah, it's fine.
Yeah, maybe.
It's fine. Nothing could go wrong here.
You'll be okay. But I would say the aggressive Warlock decks they're looking strong. I think
they really
that
are.
There's so many iterations of that deck that are good that I can see it landing in a lot of different places. If Giggling Inventor is a very popular card, which I very much anticipate it to remain so, Despicable Dreadlord looks like a fantastic option in that deck. If your opponents are, maybe getting a little bit more greedy and cutting some of that defensive measure, maybe that's a situation where, one Despicable Dreadlord is good enough. The times that you're going to add Blood Reaver Gul'dan or take out Blood Reaver Gul'dan from the deck, I think that depends on, how greedy your opponents are getting. If they're playing a lot of huge, big stuff, I don't think you need a 10-mana card in your deck that could potentially slow down your draws. But if your opponents are playing a little bit more mid-rangey, they're playing a little bit quicker, Zoo does a great job at just trading on the board pretty even for a very long time and then having that Blood Reaver Gul'dan to completely mop up the board at the end. So I think you got a lot of new strong power with it. I think Soul Infusion's a really cool card that, at times for me has made me think about, do I want to mulligan this Saronite Chaingang or this doubling imp because it's the leftmost minion in my hand? What if I draw?
What if you draw Soul Infusion?
I think stuff like that's just really cool.
It's really cool to give you those decisions that you kind of have to think of on the fly, like just, simple mulligan decisions like that. Like, for instance, do I mulligan this, like you said, Saronite Chaingang on the leftmost side just in case Soul Infusion comes in the hand? Because hitting Soul Infusion onto Doubling Imp or Saronite Chaingang, even something like a Flame Imp, a 1-mana 5/4 is just so crazy. And another thing with these Zoo lists that makes them so powerful is there's a lot of different ways to build it. We've seen this build of the Void Analysts replacing the Prince Kaliseth to kind of give you an added benefit to getting those minions in your hand buffed. That way when you kind of curve out with them, they get more powerful and powerful. But there's also still that Prince Kaliseth version, which is just very strong in itself. Having Prince Kaliseth on its respective turn just means a lot of times you just win the game because of that.
Kaliseth is super strong. There's no doubt about that. But to me, the mulligan thing. Doubling Imp was just like so much fuel for that fire too. I think that was like the perfect card. It's just a 3-mana 2/2 demon that summons a copy of itself.
It's simple, it's good, and it's powerful.
It's exactly what that deck wanted, I feel like.
Because it was missing that 3-drop slot, right? I mean, in the past, there was Darkshire Councilman, which was like one of the go-to cards. And right now, you kind of have to run cards like, in the heal version, you run the Fungal Enchanters, you run maybe Vicious Fledgling sometimes finds its way in the list. But a lot of times, those cards, they aren't as impactful on the board, right? They're very good against control decks. You play them, you hope they live, and you kind of connect once or twice, and it ends the game. But with these, they're much stickier to remove, which means they're much more powerful in those, mirror matches or those, other aggressive decks that typically at the beginning of expansions you see a lot more of.
Yeah, and then the control warrior side of things, you need stuff to kill stuff. To me, that's like the main thing there. I think Zoo is like the aggressive Warlock deck. That's like one of the matchups you want with control warrior, but you got to have your board clears. You can't always use them early, but sometimes you have to use them early. One of the big things I look at that I've seen so far is like Gorehowl has either looked fantastic or it has looked quite weak. That's one of the slots that I look at and go, maybe not.
It was powerful at first, but then
maybe
eventually...
you don't play Odd. Maybe you play Weapons Project.
I mean, when you're playing Odd, you lose access to cards like, just Warpath. Warpath in Zoo against Zoo is just very powerful. And we see here, going into the last game, you see Wacky Jackie, what I believe is a Malagos Druid.
Yes, that's right.
I believe Dane was talking about earlier. He was a little iffy on the Malagos Druid. It's kind of hard to make it work, especially when it's such a tight list for room. You really want to play a lot of just these specific cards that, you can't really play. And, I mean, that's a powerful card, but when you're given Tempo Mage mana,
yeah,
that's pretty scary.
This is a rough matchup, I'd say, for Jackie when Shaxy's got the right kind of hand. Big one to note is that Shaxy's on coin. And when Shaxy's on coin, that means that Counterspell is much more powerful against Druid. Druid oftentimes, the number one thing it's going to want to do is resolve a spell that ramps their mana. you know, one of the big ones is Nourish as well. You know, having Biology Project means that you have a way to respond to counterspell in that spot, but, you know, without it, you're looking at, you know, a Swipe or a Nourish getting eaten by a counterspell from Jackson, you know. And one of the reasons I think Tempo Mage got so much big help was Stargazer Luna. Just being able to draw so many cards if that card goes unchecked, I think is a really big deal on a minion.
Yeah, Stargazer Luna is one of those cards, you know, it kind of hits the board, you look at it and you say, I have to clear this minion. I cannot let this thing live, and sometimes, you know, they don't have the answers. You saw Jackie there just simply hold on to the Biology Project on turn 1, recognizing that there was no real reason to play it, like you were mentioning. It can be a proc for counterspell, but Biology Project is one of those very, you know, it seems good on 1, but a lot of times it isn't. You give your opponent that mana crystal, but a lot of times in the future, it becomes more powerful later on.
It's not only that, you know, it's going to depend on your hand, too.
That as well.
If he had Wild Growth in his opening hand, rather than just right on turn 2, you might have seen Biology Project in play. Biology Project right into Wild Growth. And it gives you 2 full mana crystals.
Oh, and see, this is right here, just what I was mentioning. This demands respect. I mean, we can see that this, right now, Stargazer Lunar is just a 3-mana 2/4. But Jackie Chan doesn't know that. He's looking at this saying, all right, what happens if Sorcerer's Apprentice, Primordial Glyph, just everything just starts going wrong? And, I mean, a lot of times it demands respect.
He doesn't really have a way to...
Yeah, it's a really awkward
to
answer.
show that, though. I mean, like, Naturalize... Naturalize basically just does the same thing. So he just contests it with the Arcane Tyrant. I think this is wise.
I think so as well. No real reason to commit the Naturalize. But
oh boy.
Here is the Sorcerer's Apprentice we were mentioning earlier.
Jackie's. He's
There
not
is
happy
a
about this.
Cinderstorm.
Oh, and he's got the... oh, he can't play it with the Celestial Guide. The 2-mana 2/1. It says your next spell...
Celestial Emissary.
Yeah, it has +2 spell damage this turn.
Oh, where the juggles go. All right. Can take a trade with the Luna.
Nope. Okay, so didn't draw Frostbolt.
But that's still a powerful turn. Oh, Frostbolt would have just been the icing on the cake, admirable.
Yeah, and I think Shaxi didn't feel the need to play the Kirin-Tor plus Secret here because Jackie Chan's going into a 7-mana turn. And there's 2 things. Number 1 is Malfurion, but number 2, there's Dream Petal Florist as well, which is 7-mana 4/4. It says, give a random minion in your hand -7 cost at the end of the turn.
Whew.
And it keeps that...
-7, admirable?
It keeps that cost reduction.
I mean, that's why you see it make its way into the Malagos Druid lists.
Oh, boy.
Oh, is that a I believe that's Shooting Star.
Yeah. And that's +2 spell damage in hand as well. Things are looking pretty good for Shaxi. He's got a lot of options.
Yeah, I think if you're Shaxi, you want to try and get down as many minions this turn as possible. Just kind of put that pressure on, especially when you can back it up with an Alunith later on.
Yep. Shaxi now looks like that Counterspell may be reserved specifically for the first 10-mana turn that Jackie has.
That way you can stop that Ultimate Infestation, really stop that kind of steamrolling. Because that's the one way Jackie Chan really gets back into this game, is by having that Ultimate Infestation and being allowed to play it on turn 10. But I will say, though, going for Jackie, though, is he does have Malfurion the Pestilent online. Malfurion the Pestilent is a very powerful card.
To say the least, it's pretty good.
But right now, there's not much else working. Don't really want to naturalize. You give your opponent more cards. Dream Petal Florist produces Arcane Tyrant, which is not the greatest, and I'm sure Spellstone can clear something up, but...
We're playing the secret guessing game first, so you've guessed it.
Kind of have to at this point, yeah.
And Jackie's going to have to prioritize, I think, you know, killing some stuff for a bit here. And that's going to mean Shaxi has access to Alaneth.
Yeah, Alan is still a very powerful card. Even,
oh, is it?
Yeah, now that I look at it, I'm kind of looking at the card, I'm thinking, it still looks pretty good, Adam.
That's all right, you know, draw 3 cards every single turn. That's okay.
Is eternal. My turn is not.
So you're telling me draw 3 cards is really powerful?
Especially when you do it every single turn.
But what if you're in fatigue?
You don't even have to discard them if you can't use them.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty positive. Hang on, let me check. Yep, it does not say discard on Alaneth.
Did you run the numbers on the computer behind you?
I ran them. I crunched those numbers, and I came up with a 100% chance of success.
Did you remember to carry the 3?
Yeah. And it was repeating, of course.
It was repeating.
The power course
This is Jackie's in trouble.
Yeah, Jackie's in trouble. That Nourish picked up though.
That's the 3 cards he needs.
That's the 3 that we carried
He
earlier.
needs 3 cards really bad.
I'm saying though.
Oh,
that,
that's a big one.
That is a big draw. I'm saying though that having this Malfurion means you can armor up every turn. That you can just potentially take Shaxi to fatigue.
Well, that's the game plan for Druid,
That
right?
has to be right now.
Gain a bunch of armor, and Phlebinus Floop is not really going to help that. So Phlebinus Floop, God, it's hard to say that card. I feel like this set was purposefully made to make casters misstep on what they say.
Oh no, I'm good.
This is 3-4, and I was just
like
going to talk about how weak it is in this matchup in particular. Phlebinus Floop, while it's in your hand, when you play a minion, actually play one, it becomes a copy of it. It becomes a 4-mana 3/4 copy of it. So while it's still in your deck, if you play Malagos and then you draw Floop, it's still just a 4-mana 3/4. But if you have Malagos in hand and you play Malagos, it becomes a Malagos until you actually pay mana to play another minion. If you summon them from Oaken Summons or you make some Scarabs from Spreading Plague or Malfurion, it will not copy those.
Yeah, it's only when you play the minion. You get a flock of geese.
Yes.
A flock of Mally geese.
Yeah. And that card, in a lot of matchups, is super scary.
Especially when it's just, it's solid sometimes just to play as an Arcane Tyrant. I mean, a lot of times you just play out and Nourish and you can put it on the board just to contest. We saw that's what Jackie Chan did here, just to contest the board. Unfortunately for him, it just got cleared up immediately.
Oh, and then the goose gets drawn. But, letting loose the goose juice right now I don't think is the plan. It's live, because eventually Shaxi's Alaneth is going to bring him, like you said, to that fatigue point. So it's a matter of, can the new burn get it done?
My thoughts are
There is some more board-centric things, though. With the unexpected results, it does help out a lot to have, just kind of that board pressure that typically sometimes Tempo Mage can lack. A lot of times Tempo Mage, they get to this state of the game, they can't really pressure the board, and they kind of fall flat because the burn doesn't get them there because of the armor gain. With unexpected results, that can get them a little bit of extra damage that typically Tempo Mage didn't have in the past.
And Mana Worm. Mana Worm just forced an attack from Jackie Chan there in fear of how much damage he could deliver.
All right, 2 4-drops. Again, Celestial Emissary buffing the spell damage.
Unexpected results summons 2 2-cost minions.
Yes.
But the cost of the minion that you summon is affected by spell damage. So, if for whatever reason you have plus 8 spell damage, you will summon 2 10-cost minions with that card.
That's impressive. I wonder how you'd get plus 8 spell damage. You just stick a Malagos.
Well, you would Simulacrum 2 copies of the Celestial guy.
Okay.
And then you would play Leyline Manipulator to discount those 2 copies. And then you'd play your 2, and then you'd play the 2 that you discounted, and then you would unexpected results.
Sold.
You'd stick 2 Cosmic Elementals and a Blood Mage and a Kobold Geomancer to the board.
You stick 3 Malagos to the board.
You could very easily stick... oh, there's no 15-cost minion, is there? So does it summon anything in that spot? Can you have too much spell damage?
I'm going straight to the lab, Admiral.
I gotta know.
I'm going straight to the lab.
This game if you could have too much spell damage. Dr. J's putting the gloves on.
Death is eternal. My turn is
Jackie
not.
just has to try and find some kind of way to, get this Malagos or just try and live.
Well, he's considering playing it now just to have the body on board, and that makes some sense to me.
I mean, I don't blame him. I think you kind of have to, because if you just hero power over and over, especially with this new kind of version of the mage where you have these unexpected results and these, I believe that's Cosmic Anomaly, isn't it?
Is it Cosmic Anomaly's the name?
I believe so. I could be wrong.
What did I call it earlier? Cosmic.
I called it 4 mana, 4/3 plus 2 spell damage.
That's the very good description of it, because that's what it does.
Is that not the name?
Look, this is a lot of damage. All right, I don't know how Shaxi gets all this damage out of hand, but if he can.
But it is really awkward to get this damage out, though, and you really want to kind of push through some of this minion damage, but with the Spreading Plague, it doesn't really help, and Cosmic Anomaly was correct.
Oh, here we go.
All right. I think he really wants these missiles to hit some of the Scarabs, because then he can go ahead and Shooting Star to get through the rest of them. Is he going to answer the Malygos?
Well, perhaps. I mean, Goose is scary. And he does have a lot of board right now, so I don't think this is unreasonable.
Yeah, I think in Shaxy's mind, he's saying, you know what, I've got board right now. I can even get more board with the other unexpected results.
Draw 3 more cards.
And right now, there's...
That's a lot of damage.
Could even go for another Cosmic Emissary into unexpected results again, just to get 2 more 4-drops. Really solidify that board.
Well, that's if the 4-3 doesn't stick.
Yeah, there would be 2 6-drops.
Gloop's glorious Gloop is not going to be Gloop in this turn. I don't think. I mean, could Gloop swipe and then hero power?
That is a potential line of play. You know, I'm liking that.
The Gloop's a 1-mana spell. It says for each minion that dies after you cast it, you restore. You get an extra mana this turn. So it's like picture Innervate, but each time a minion dies.
So the way he would be able to hero power is he plays it, he swipes the Cosmic Anomaly, he then gets that 2 mana back. He can now fit in the hero power to clean up that Ancient Mage.
Or he can get 3 armor. Either one he chooses.
Death is eternal.
And right now, your opponent's drawing as many cards as they have. You were looking at 20 life and going, this may not be enough. But if you leave the 2-3 around, that's 2 more damage every single turn. But how many more turns are left? It could just be the 1 attack.
It's a hard call to make if you're Jackie Chan. Looks like he's going to go for the armor. I don't blame him. You would take 2 damage from taking the hero power, whereas if you gain the 3, you kind of gain 1 life in the process, especially when you know it's going to come to fatigue next turn.
Someday I'll be just
Oh,
like you.
boy. Oh, boy is right.
Oh,
Oh,
that
whew.
This is a lot of damage.
Well, can you turn around on that computer real quick, and can you calculate how much damage is here?
Give me a sec. Coming up with 18 from hand right now. If you play the Emissary, it's 20 from hand.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Especially when Jackie Chan's only at 23.
Yeah, and remember I said 20 from hand.
Okay, those were kind of...
No, they weren't kind of. I know what you're. I know
they
what
were
you're
bad.
gonna say. Yeah. Those are exceptionally poor right now.
I wonder if it was even worth playing those. Just, I mean, maybe the spell damage on face was just more important, like fitting a fireball with the Cosmic Emissary.
He's going in fatigue, so he needs minion damage still. Jackie does not look like he's got a way to really sustain this Giggling Inventor, so Branching Pass brings him up to 21 effective life. Giggling Inventor absorbs some amount of attacks here. Would a second Branching Pass perhaps get Jackie out of this? This is going to be close.
This is going to be very close. Jackie's going to have to outlast at least 1 more turn even after this one.
Because fatigue is about to get real. I mean, that is a big amount of fatigue that's coming. 3, 4, and 5 just this turn. And then 6 on the following turn. So 11, 12, 13,
19.
14, 15, 16? No. Took
18 damage.
3, 4, and 5, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, taking 18 before Shaxi gets his next turn. Which means if he does not kill Jackie in 2 turns, he has been defeated.
Yeah, if only those, those drops were just a little bit more impactful. I mean, still, Giggling Inventor, we can see how clutch it is right here. It's virtually like a spreading plague.
An incredible
Just trying to
discovery.
keep Jackie alive for just 1 more turn. Looks like Shaxi just opting to keep as many minions alive as possible. Has to get in as much damage next turn as he can.
Ow. Wait, 11! They're going to take 6! The ultimate invitation!
And they can even test for counterspell. I mean, I think they know that it was explosive runes, but yeah, the ultimate infestation is just going to end this
Wow.
game.
The fatigue!
The power of Lunith was just too much for Shaxi to handle.
Sometimes with great power comes great responsibility. And if you mismanage that responsibility, you die. 3-0 for Europe in this one. Jackie's got a big smile on after that because that did not look like a favorable spot.
No, it was looking really bad for Jackie at that point.
So perhaps investing the spell damage into just pure damage would have worked out better in that circumstance, but
It's hard to say, though, because those minions did push a little bit of damage. They did help get through a little bit of damage, but at the very end, just being that slight bit of damage off, it might have been better just to go for that burn plan.
yep, it could have been, but, you know, Druid's still looking pretty darn good in that one. But there's a look at the new mage deck that you get to build, but the new Boomsday Project set is out. And if you want 3 free packs plus a free legendary, if you haven't logged in yet to get those things, make sure you update your phone apps. Make sure you update your Battle.net. Log in now and get that stuff. That's how you can start battling. Because you can't get packs if you don't play Hearthstone. So play some Hearthstone.
I also believe after all of this is said and done, you can go to playhearthstone.com and see all the deck lists that these players are playing. So, you know, if you want some creative inspiration, you can go ahead and take a look at those deck lists and find some decks of your own.
That's right.
You want to play some Tempo Mage, you know where to find the deck list.
That's right. So coming up next, we're going to have Korea taking on North America in our 4th match of the day. We got 6 matches in total that we'll be playing, so don't go anywhere, guys. Plenty more Hearthstone right after this.